Hello, everyone, and welcome to Saanich, Emerging Land, Emerging People. My name is Maria Koropecki, and I am your host. Today, we're visiting Royal Oak Burial Park, a place of consolation, peace, and renewal. Royal Oak Burial Park was opened on Wednesday, November 28, 1923, and 2 days later, Florence Mary Johns became the first person buried in the new cemetery. Since then, the burial park has been the final resting place for tens of thousands of people from all corners of the world, including 5 premiers, hockey stars, business leaders, war veterans, entertainers, poets, pioneers, and many others. When I first approached Lorraine Fracey at Royal Oak Burial Park to ask if I could film an episode of Saanich Emerging Land, Emerging People on the grounds, I mentioned my father was buried there. She asked his name and I said Koropecki, and she said, "Oh, I took care of him." My father died 20 years ago, and her words made me feel like she cared, like she thought of us as family. She was most generous and helpful and even gave me a copy of this book, Royal Oak Burial Park, A History and Guide by Dave Obey, which is a fascinating read. Earlier this year, as I was just starting to film Saanich Emerging Land, Emerging People, Russia attacked Ukraine and war broke out on the land of my ancestors. The horrific news traveled around the world like a dust storm, but also opened up waves of compassion that were just as intense. And when Russia's misguided leader said that Ukraine had no history, it only strengthened my resolve to shine a light on Ukraine's rich culture and include my Ukrainian heritage in the telling of my stories. I believe that by telling our family stories, our spirit lives on, and that's how we will thrive long into the future. And today I'd like to tell you a little bit about my father, Yarko Koropecki, who was an officer in the Canadian Navy, and the focus of much of his work was Ukraine. I wonder if he was still living today, if he, as a Ukrainian Canadian, could have sat at the diplomatic tables and influenced and negotiated a peaceful end to this violence much sooner. When I was 6 years old, my family lived in Ottawa and were part of a vibrant Ukrainian community. I also remember we had these huge sunflowers growing outside our kitchen door off the steps. The flowers, with their big faces, were taller than I was and almost seemed human to me. When I was 7, my family lived in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and even there we connected with the local Ukrainian community. I remember dancing to a polka called "It's Fun to Be Ukrainian" while I wore my Super Yuki t-shirt. And then when I was 9, we moved to Hawaii, and somehow my mother managed to find the Ukrainian community there as well. Being Ukrainian is part of who I am. It's my ancestry, and I'm grateful that even though my grandparents and parents fled Ukraine after World War II, we are still keeping our Ukrainian sensibilities, cuisine, language, culture, dancing, traditions, and stories alive in the world today. I love how Ukrainians are standing up to the bullies and aren't taking these attacks lying down. Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom and are inspiring the world. As my father used to say, hooray for the good guys. I also love how people from all walks of life, from many nations far and wide, have shown up during this time as well, whether they have Ukrainian roots or not. I'm so touched and moved by the compassion that is circulating. It's palpable. Thank you, everyone, for your prayers, songs, donations, conversations, acts of kindness, and for standing with us like sunflowers in a garden of solidarity. It truly means a lot. Standing with Ukraine. In this chapter of my novel, Closer to Indigo, the main character, Maria Ponomarenko, has a close encounter with a dragonfly. I'm going to train for my Camino, Maria says to her mother over her shoulder as she steps out the door. With her hood over her head, Maria tunes into the hollow tapping sound of the rain as it lands on the green leaves, the pavement, and her jacket. The chunky raindrops sound like they are the size of egg yolks and feel cool as they splash down on her hands and face. As she walks down her familiar street, she keeps her head down and her eyes to the ground to avoid any puddles. The road banks left at the top of the hill where Lubomira's car had once gotten stuck in the snow, and from this vantage point, she sees two streams of rainwater flowing towards the main street below. She chooses to stay along the rock wall to the right, admiring the pink flowers tended by her neighbors. On this stretch of road, the tall trees on the steep slope offer some protection from the rain, but even within just a few minutes of being outside, Maria's coat is already drenched. One more step with her left foot and she would have been sorry, but instead she catches herself at the last second. There he is, a purple dragonfly, sitting on the side of the road, about a foot from the retaining wall. He is still moving, but is not able to get himself off the driveway to safety. She can see the poor thing is struggling, so she bends down and places her right hand on the cold road next to him. To her surprise, the dragonfly crawls on board. "Oh, oh, oh," she says as she stands up, the dragonfly clinging to her wet index finger. She places her hand on the brown earth, thinking the dragonfly will just march off and she will continue on her walk. But he does not. The purple dragonfly stays on her hand. She points him towards a pink flower. "Maybe you like it better here," she says to him. Still, he does not budge. "Come on, love, it's okay," she coaxes, but the dragonfly stays put. "Oh dear, you can't fly, can you? Your wings are soaking wet. Too heavy to fly." So Maria remains there at the side of the driveway with a living dragonfly on her hand and rain dripping from her nose for several long minutes. What am I going to do? Everything else in her environment has faded away, and she is now in a bubble with a dragonfly. No one else is around and no cars pass. All she can do is study him close up and personal, and what a beauty he is. The dragonfly is the size of a doorknob, fitting neatly into her palm. His tissue paper wings are soft gray lavender and have bold black stripes across the span. Every minute or so, he flutters his wings to try to lift himself up to fly, but his efforts are frustrated. Maria feels the current from his tiny feet as he steps lightly on her rain-drenched skin. "I have to get you out of the rain," she thinks. And so she turns around and heads back towards home, transporting her little friend in tow, keeping her eyes glued on him so he does not fall off. Maria keeps repeating, "You'll be okay. Keep going. You're doing great. I love you. You're beautiful and you can fly." The dragonfly tries to take off but cannot get any lift. Within a few steps down the cul-de-sac, Maria opens the gate to the courtyard entrance of her home. She pushes the front door open and calls to her mother. "Mom, can you get my phone from my night table? I need you to take a photo for me." Curious, Lubomira puts down her sewing project and comes to the front door right away. "Look," says Maria, gesturing with her hand. "I found a dragonfly." Read from Closer to Indigo by Maria Kolopecki.